Hello and welcome back to another episode of Supercoach Insider. My name is Ben.
I'm Swizz. This is Max.
And thank you for joining us. It is getting into the crunch time. Buys are coming. Rookies are nowhere to be found and people want to upgrade anyway. Swizz, thank you for joining me. We are getting into round 8, our weekly digest, trying to unpack all the relevant things week to week. Great to have you on, mate. How are you traveling so far?
Mate, I'm good. Yeah, it was a good weekend. Bounced back after my horrendous week last week, which was nice. So what I get, 25.89. So the 6,000 spots I dropped the week before, I think I made up 5,000 of them. So not too bad. So I'm, you know, the worst thing is I have the 2,000 round the week before, and I'm like, you know what, whatever, who cares? Can't do much. As much as I get more annoyed this week because I trade, trainer because I trade Reed instead of trainer for different reasons. And we obviously talked about that on Thursday. We were on the phone together, and unfortunately Reed has like a career game and it's 22 points there. And I was kind of looking around going, Dacos is the obvious option, but maybe there was somebody else I could have brought in, squeezed a few more points out. But I'm probably now more annoyed of the previous weeks because I'm like, oh God, I think I worked it out. I would have been like top 500. But, so be it. Just got to keep putting up the good scores and knocking off that ranking.
Yeah, you and your bloody Max Gone ownership.
Yes, Maxi.
It seems to be a little bit like that. I mean, you got TDK averaging 120, Gorn's going big, Cherry's starting to find his form, and we've still got Flynn on field. So you're going to be missing. If you're a TDK owner, you're going to be a little bit upset one way or another. And but look, there's plenty of holes to fill. So before we move on, SC Insider 100, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok, all the audio platforms as well. Get in there, enjoy. We're going to be starting this podcast as well. So like previous weeks, we're going live. So if you do come onto the chats and you haven't seen and you put up a question and we've already answered it, we're going to kind of gloss by that a little bit because no one likes to repeat the same thing 3 times. But if you do have something new to add, we are going to interact with you during this live stream, answer all these questions and the hot debates and the big topics for the week. And I think, Swizz, there's probably no bigger topic this week outside of the Chera copping a bullshit 1-week suspension.
Yeah, they'll appeal.
Yes, outside of that, and we'll get into that later, but, it's pretty much a real stalled week because the rookies aren't on the bubble. And we're all in upgrade season and people want to improve their side and you got so much value. So you got your Chad Warners at 460, your Petrarcas at, 496, 497. So Rankin as well has dropped around that price. Dawson's at the same price as well. You've got Zorko dropping still. Lockie Neal's about to go back up, and you want to bring this value into your side, and then you're looking around going, okay, I've got some rookies I want to downgrade, and who's there? Literally no one on the bubble, unless you're going to go early, which brings a whole nother debate into it as far as an absolute challenge and that risk that you're trying to avoid by going early on a rookie. So I want to break this down a little bit because we're going to say those who have cash, right? And there's a few people here who already have cash. They've already got money. They've been banking up there. You're good little savers if you got money in the bank and you haven't upgraded yet. So you are ready. This is the week for you. You've banked up. You got your cash. You're going to flip a Davidson or a Reed and you got money and you go on places and you're fine. So those people I think are fine. You're going to be happy. You're going to make trades. I'm talking to those who might have a Reed. They might have a Davidson. They might have a few of these other players and they want to make some moves and they want to free up some cash. And in order to do that, they're going to have to go early on a rookie or bring in a really questionable Oscar McDonald. So we're probably going to start there, Swizz. How are you finding the chat at the moment out there as far as upgrading? Because I feel like there's Bustlinger, there's McDonald, there's Husweight, and people are going early or people are doubling down and going early, which is even more scary. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not too sure about the doubling down. There's a couple of weird moves that you can sort of play around with. But I've seen also some people potentially looking at who is a premium, who has got a large break even, for example, and kind of doing what Chris did early in the season with, say, Sheasel. Can I try to downgrade them to somebody in that 500 mark where I might make 100K off them, but I've got enough money in the bank to now upgrade, like Murphy Reed, for example, who if I put 100K on him plus the 100K I might have, I can now have 2 500 players instead of that 600 and that 300 guy. So there is a little bit of chatter about that kind of strategy. And then, as you said, there's the, okay, do we go back ourselves in the Oscar McDonald and go the normal one down, one up? And, there's some people even looking at potentially holding, but is that the right move because other people are trying to upgrade their team? A lot of discussion around your sort of Levi, Ashcroft and Trainer. Trainer's a really interesting one, and I'll talk a little bit more about him soon. So I think this is the most interesting nearly week so far. And last week was quite interesting because people were bringing in different types of premiums. Obviously, Dacos was the more popular, but there were people going different routes. Where this week, there's no sort of, I'd say, clear one path that people were taking. And depending on who they're downgrading and more importantly, who they're upgrading to, could really set your team up going forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I guess that's one way to kind of sideways a premium and bank 100K, but you'd be absolutely crazy to go, say, at an Andrew Brayshaw to a Lockie Neal and put 100K on that one. But I see what you mean about trying to make some decisions. And I see a lot of people trying to still correct premiums too at this point, which, I guess if you've got nowhere to go, then maybe you could correct. However, buys are only, 4 or 5 weeks away, especially if they have the first buy round. So I see people with Dale as well, which is one of the comments that I'm seeing out there at the moment. So Maxi here if I can't find money without trading Dale, should I just bank 180K for the next week? Well, I think keep your premiums if you have them at this point, and you might as well try and make moves around it. Alex is here also talking about where's Chris. He's got the link. He's got family and stuff he's taking care of, but he does have the link to jump on the stream. So we're just hoping that he'll jump in at any point that he is able to, and he'll just pick up and run with wherever we are at that kind of point. But I think it is very much, and I've seen a lot of people trying to either get rid of Ashcroft, Levi, and Trainer or Reed, or so if you have Murph Reed, it's probably the easy one. And I think Davidson, you could probably get rid of him as well. But again, it depends if you already have cash. So we're going to go through probably the 3 main rookie targets, their pros and cons, and then you just kind of, it does depend on your team and where you're ranked. So at the moment, right, I'm ranked fairly well. I want points on field. All right. Now, if I had a juicy fat rookie that was ready to go and I hadn't already traded out, say Davidson and Reed in previous weeks, then I'd probably look to be aggressive in that fact because they're not on field anyway. I'm not playing them on field. I can then get a premium on field and take those points, and then my team would get more points for the week, and I should improve ranking. Knowing it is a risk, though, because I think the last time I actually went after someone after one game, it was Cumming, and in his first year, and he played the second game, I think, or sub or injured or didn't play well, and then never came back for the rest of the season. So there is that risk, right? And someone that you cut, if you cut early, they might have a spike game to restart their cash, and they might make, like Reed did, another 35K or whatever it is, and you're going, well, hang on, I just got rid of this guy, and they've respiked their score, or they had a good round. And then imagine that. Imagine if you traded Reed last week for someone like, I don't know, let's just say a Bustlinger, and you go, I'm going early, I'm going to free up cash. I went Reed to Bustlinger last week as an example. Reed scores well and restarts his gen a little bit or makes a bit more cash. And then the next week, imagine Bustlinger's dropped. And then not only, yes, you've freed up cash, however, you've now got a donut and you're carrying someone that's at 150K, or actually, no, he wouldn't have even had a price rise. So that's probably the big risk, actually. If they haven't got a price rise and you just got a donut, that's the big risk of going early. So Oscar McDonald's the one we'll probably touch on first because he is actually on the bubble. He's played 2 games, averaging 68. So he scored an 85 on the weekend. I think it was about a 50 or so in his first round. Let's talk about the positives. The positives is he's been chopping out the ruck, only had 2 hit-outs though, but it does mean that he has been around the ball. The other positive, scoring an 85, does really accentuate your scoring potential. So he is projected to go up $94,000 if he scores, I think it's 55 for the next 2 weeks. So if he scores 55, which isn't that unachievable for 2 weeks, he's going to make you 90 odd K. And if he scores another really good score of a 70 or something, he's made 100K. And then you can trade him later on, and you actually, it's a worthwhile trade. However, the negative, Swizz, what's the big glaring omission that's possibly coming in this week that could really mess up the McDonald?
Well, there's 2 that we've got to look at. There's Luke Jackson, and there's the guy that he replaced, which was Patrick Voss, who got another week or so on his suspension. I'll cover the Patrick Voss part. So first off, his form wasn't that great while he was in. Like, he was servicing a role. They obviously like playing that extra tall. So even if, say, Jackson wasn't there or Darcy went down or whatever, like, you look at Voss's stats, like first week, 1 goal 3, round 3, 1 goal 3. He kicked 1 point in the third and kicked 1 goal against the Tigers. He's had 1, 3, 6, and 9 hit outs as that backup ruck as well. It's not sort of saying to me, even if this guy was, ready to go this week, that he would replace Oscar, because I think Oscar's actually performing better than him. So I think we park the Patrick Voss aside, but it's now what Freo does with the fact that Jackson. So they've still got listed at the moment. It's 1 week, but it's most likely. I guess it'll be one of those things. It's a test and sort of see how it goes. The thing probably that works for us is who are looking at, say, Oscar McDonald, at least this week, they are playing the Friday night game, and it's Melbourne, so it's a shorter week for them. So as long as only if he's really right to go will they play him, because they have another short week the previous week where they play Collingwood on the Thursday night. So are you really going to risk flying Jackson over to Melbourne when, nothing like St Kilda's still going to be a tough game for them to beat at Marvel, but the big one, Collingwood at home, is the big marquee match outside the derby, is at the Les Hall Anzac Day for them. So they're going to want their best team for that. And do they probably just wait for Jackson for 1 more week so he's right and ready to go for that game? But then it's what happens for Oscar McDonald. So you're potentially only getting 1 week out of him. Maybe they play him 1 week extra, depending on how Jackson is, but I'd say probably he goes straight out there. So you are probably stuck with a guy who he could potentially come out and make us 50, 60K this week, no problems. What happens the week after?
Yep, I agree. And I'm going to pair this with a couple of things. So if Jackson and Darcy are paired together, then I think it's shot. The only realm in which I'd probably consider it is if, let's say, Darcy's dropped, Jackson plays, and McDonald plays. Then I see a real realm where, okay, if he plays well, he keeps his spot, and that would be a rookie worth going. Now, I also want to pair this with, if you got Carroll in last week, his security, you would hope now, has gotten a little better with some of the injuries at Carlton. So Hewitt was a calf, apparently nowhere near as bad as his 3-monther that he did, but that still looks like a significant time on the sideline. Silvani broke a hand or surgery on his hand. He's out for 1 to 2 weeks. So that's at least there. So even with Cowan coming back in, Williams was playing in defense and Silvani was playing defense.
Yeah,
so hopefully
Hewitt. So I was trying to rack my brain going, when did Hewitt go down?
But no, sorry, not Hewitt.
Yeah, Zach Williams.
Zach Williams.
Zach Williams. But so Silvani, they're saying 1 to 2, maybe 3. So straight away, he's the one that's the obvious one in defense. So even if Cowan comes back, it's probably 2 to 3 weeks. And I think the third week, or the second week, they play interstate or something like that. It might be even the third week. So again, unless he's right, a hand's probably a little bit different. Like traveling with a hand injury, if you're repairing that, it's probably a little bit different than a tall man sitting on a plane with a hamstring injury. So I don't think that worries. So he could potentially come back early, depending on the matchups and everything there. But in saying that, we're still getting at least 2 weeks of probably the Cowan and Carroll working together in that. And then it depends what they want to go there. I would expect them, probably because Zach Williams is playing forward, more likely to then replace a forward and Silvani comes in. But in saying that, Silvani can come back and play forward too. Obviously, he's very versatile. So even though it's not a like for Williams, maybe they want to kind of stretch them and play the 3 talls, or how they ever want to set up with that. So they do have options available to them, Carlton. Sam Doherty's obviously sitting in that VFL as well, who could potentially come back. So maybe he comes back for a Williams and they do a reshape there. They do have a little bit of depth. But at least for now, Carroll, as much as he had some shocking moments, there was 4 moments in the game.
Slipped over a couple of times, free against, because he slipped on the ball.
Just freeze and stuff. Late in the game, he had some really important moments. So I think that'll be like where Voss was tearing out what's left of his hair earlier in the game with him. Carroll did step up when probably required in that fourth, which would have probably bought him another week anyway. But now the fact that Silvani's down, well, he's just safe now for at least 1 or 2.
Yep, and Voss did speak about, trying to have some continuity in the side as well, not making too many changes, trying to be fairly settled. So especially if you've already you've got 2 injuries from the week prior, plus a guy who's meant to be suspended for a week already. That's already 3 forced changes. Hopefully, Cherish should appeal and get off it. But that does at least give you a bit of security. But Carroll was very much, quite shaky. So the idea being as well is if you bring in McDonald this week, well, who are you getting rid of next week? If, let's say, Bustling does well, Carroll will probably be too early. Who are you getting rid of? Unless you've still got, Connor O'Sullivan, or you've still got, Trainer and Reed, and you've got those guys in prior, then yeah, maybe you could go early on a McDonald and risk it for that if you didn't go Carroll, or if you have, but at least that way you don't want to get parked with too many dead rookies on your pine, especially going into bye rounds too. So you don't have a dead rookie there.
Pryor's probably the only one because Reed will still have cash to make because he's still got the 90 in his cycle now, which unbelievable game for a guy in the wet. That's why I moved him on, because I'm like, in the wet, key defenders, probably not going to have that great. And the way he was leaping for intercepts, well done to Reed. So you're probably not moving him on. And then Trainer, if you've kept Trainer last week, you're keeping him this week. You're definitely keeping him the following week because his 2 will cycle out. So his cash actually resets. That's the whole idea of keeping Trainer, because I thought, he's probably the more reliable one, and it's proven maybe not to have the huge scores like Reed can, but Reed can obviously have the 30s as well, where Trainer seems to be pretty consistent. And if he didn't, it was at 66. So I was obviously watching that game live, and there was a bit where we got screwed over again with one of these 20-meter passes, which the umpire called not 15. Trainer takes that mark, gets a kick, and then what ends up actually happening, he gets caught holding the ball. And because they scored from it, they actually took 4 points off for him. So not only this should be the 66, he actually should have scored 76 from that game. And, suddenly it looks, he actually, gets his break even, and it actually kind of looks good coming into this week. So, frustrating that, but, so you are right, because the options then do become quite less. Even Cos, because he played quite well too. So unless you've already got a dead rookie, maybe it's a Patton, maybe it's a Liam O'Connell like myself, but I use him as a loophole. You potentially have something there. But it's kind of, you're side swapping for a little bit of cash gen. But I don't think these rookies are going to be kind of you might have one on the bubble to get rid of, but not the rest.
Yep. And you speak about Pryor, mate. Don't you know Reed went well this week? So it has to be Pryor next week.
100%.
And anyone putting them on field, just go the opposite this week, because that seems to be whoever goes well one week, it's the other one the week after. And I see posts week after week, I think the last month, where one's going big and the other one just stinks up, and they're like putting the wrong person on field.
Yeah.
Just put them both on field. Between the two of them, will average 70.
Well, that's why I scored bad the week before, because I tried that with Pal Pepper. I'm like, well, he scored well last week. He's got an average of 33 away. Well, I'm benching him this week, and then he still scores well.
Right. That's right. I put him on field too.
Yeah, I had him on field this week at least.
Yeah, and I had Chris tell me to put Levi Ashcroft on field instead of Sam Pal Pepper, and I ignored him because I know better. Yes. But yes, so we'll go into the other ones then, and then get into some of these questions that some people do have regarding these rookies, and then scenarios in which whether you would trade, etc. So moving on to particularly the next one. Now I'm going to start with probably my favorite one, and that is Henry Husweight. So the coach did come out saying that he was wrapped for him. He finally got his chance, and he commented to say that he pretty much took the chance with 2 hands, and he did perform really well. So I think he was like 24 touches. A really tall mid, so very much replicates Nash. And I think I went on to my live stream last week on the Thursday when I spoke about my team, and I said if there was someone I was going to go without even looking at it, if I needed a player and there was no one on the bubble, I would have gone Husweight straight up. Now, only because I feel like he plays while Nash doesn't, so that buys him 4 weeks and 2 price rises. Hopefully, if he scores okay, he might actually make you, 100K over those 2 price rises. And then you have to hope the fact that maybe they hold Nash back, or maybe he kicks someone else out of the side, and then it becomes a hit and hope. But he did perform really well. Scored, what was it, 72 in his first round, yeah, which I think is definitely a good option. And then not to negate the fact that Hawthorn are also playing Richmond this week also. So that could be a nice little opportunity for a big sort of midfielder to do well. But yeah, Husweight had the 24 touches for 72. So it could have been better, to be honest. A couple tackles, only a couple marks, but 24 touches was kind of up there. I think was second highest for Hawks, but didn't really translate as far as the scoring goes, because he was kind of mid to low table on the Hawks scoring pecking chain. So yeah, interesting. I like him though. He's been racking up mid 30s in the VFL, and big contested sort of ball winner generally. So I think I'm hoping second time up, he should be a little bit better. First match after VFL, it's a bit faster. and I think this week he should improve from it, which means I can't see him performing bad against Richmond. Sorry, Swizz, especially if he's getting the midfield minutes.
I agree with that. The issue is I don't think the Hawks like him as much as they like some of the other players in there, in saying that he did play more CBAs and to Ward. So kind of don't know what's going on with Wardy at the moment as well, but I guess he can push a little bit more outside, which he did over the weekend where Huss was more that inside mid. And it's probably why they haven't probably liked him in there, because as they do have Warple and Nash and these sort of guys. The fact that, it takes 24 touches for him to just score 72, like his points per disposal could be a little bit worried. But as you said, there could be that's the first game, maybe he cleans that up just a little bit and going forward. And sometimes you look at that and you think, okay, the guy's probably had 18 or 19 handballs, but he still kicked the ball 12 times. And it wasn't like there was a huge amount of turnovers. There was 4 turnovers, but probably the big part was, it's only probably 7 contested for a guy who's probably that big body. Sometimes you probably see a lot more contested in there. So I'm going to gather a couple of those turnovers were from uncontested, because that's why he scored so low. So hopefully he's better for the run this week. And I don't mind the idea of going early because, as we know, Nash is out. And the fact that these are the 2 weeks where he's probably got his best opportunity to score well off field. I think they might have the Demons the week after, off the top of my head.
I think they do, and then Brisbane not long after.
And then it does it does probably get a bit harder. So they do have the D. So he's probably got potentially this week and next week to actually do some decent on-field scoring. So if you kind of do need an M8 or somebody that you can, maybe you're loopholing, say Xavier Lindsay. So you just don't see the obvious person that you might have that's not playing in your team.
Exactly, yeah.
But for whatever reason, you might have somebody. I'm trying to think. Maybe even if, say, Essendon, you've got Sardis still, so you might have to put the emergency on him and then bring in Husweight.
Although Sardis probably plays this week, Swizz.
Well, no, what I'm saying is like you'd have Sardis as your emergency at M9, and then you could bring Husweight in this week. And if Sardis doesn't work out, you could potentially do something like that. Maybe if you've got a Murphy Reid and you're holding him still. So I'm just trying to think of ways that you could have 2 bites of the cherry if you went early. But at least you're going to get a couple more weeks out of him. And at least you're going to get 2 price rises. But after that, potentially becomes a little bit of a dead rookie, because I could see him potentially holding his spot, but just being the sub once Nash comes in, or he just gets booted.
Yep, so it could be the ultimate trap, really. You play West Coast, you play Richmond, it looks like you're great on the bubble, and then you just fizzle out. Like, he could be the ultimate trap, but it's that's it with rookies at the moment when desperate times calls for desperate measures. And speaking of desperate too, I'm surprised that the Dogs did so well, to be honest. And Bustling did have a fairly good game. He gave away a couple frees, but the part that worried me the most, because I thought, okay, Lob's going to go forward, Bustling will go in defense, and everything will be fine, and that'll be his role, right? But when they dump Jones and they drop him, that makes it concerning for me, because now he's not only just a like-for-like replacement to do the role based on the availability they have, he's now fighting to keep his spot. And it wasn't like he's saying, oh, yeah, he's tearing up the VFL and he's earned his spot as far as we can't deny him anymore. It was, we've got to see what he's made of, basically. Let's see how he goes. He's been in the system for so long. They keep extending his contract. What was he drafted 2-3 years ago? And, he was a top pick with a good contested mark and the rest of it. It's like, well, let's see. You're either made for AFL level or you're not, and we're just going to find out. So it didn't really give me the hugest amount of confidence where he was saying we can't refuse him. They just dropped Jones and we'll go, well, let's give this kid a go. And I thought he did do quite well. So I'm hoping he'll also be better for the run, but he's someone that I probably wouldn't bring in early. Just if he doesn't play his role well and he gets beaten by a forward, then they might go, well, let's just bring Jones back in for a bit of stability and a bit of experience. So, I'm more worried about him than I am probably some others. And I do hope he does well because I like the bus. But do you think, is it warning signs, Swizz? Because I think you have to see another game from him. I don't know if you can go early on the bus.
The fact that they did quite well, especially against that forward line with Jesse Hogan in, But it's a 57. It's a key defender. Unlike at least with Zach Reid, where sometimes he frees up to be the second or third guy. Mackay's obviously plays number one lockdown. But if Jones is not there, he's potentially is the number one guy. They've got Georgiades to deal with this week. The following week they go up to Darwin, which is really bad place if you have key forwards or key defenders because of the conditions up there and it gets really slippery and stuff. And even I feel like he could be one that could potentially suck in because you might get, the windy conditions at Ballarat this week, a few long balls go astray. He might take a few intercept marks. Let's say he gets out to a 60 odd and people go, oh, well, here, at least he's on a decent negative break even. I need somebody to downgrade because somebody, one of our defenders then caps out. Maybe people hold for pride for one more week or whatever. But yeah, that Gold Coast game the following week, I would have massive concerns if he survives that long. Up against sort of King in those conditions, they aren't going to be easy for a defender. And then even after that, if it was to survive long term, like the Bombers, fine. But then Geelong, Hawthorn, as much as Hawthorn don't have the best forward line, it's still Gunston, Chol, who are scoring. And then, still a handful. So, and then, the Cats down in Geelong, like who, it's not like that. It's like, okay, well, they're just going to be easy picking. And there's some defenses there where you could see him just consistently getting 60s or whatever. And again, he'll be the main man down there. So it does make it tough. So it's not somebody I'm overly thrilled about bringing in. And I'm probably would be more inclined to go Oscar McDonald if I needed to go one, just because the fact that, I can potentially see the team, how it's played this week. And if he was named, why Jackson and Darcy were still named, then that would give me some confidence. If McDonald, they weren't named and he's still in for a week, I'm probably less likely to do that. But with Bustling, we're really playing a guessing game on at any given point that they could make that change.
Yep. And the thing that we need to note as well is that with these players you're getting rid of, yes, you need to free up money, and money is the big name of the game, right? But it's not like, Reed's just shy of 300. So yes, you can make 180K and he's done his job, and trainers, what's he made? Like 150. So you do want that money, but also you're looking at trading out like Connor O'Sullivan, you're looking at trading out, Reed and all these players who are best 22. Like they get named every single week, and you've still got about 4 or 5 weeks until buys. Then it's best 18. Some of them probably you might just have to go a little slow burn on them. And that's the realistic nature of where we're currently sitting. And we're just waiting for some actual solid rookies to show up. And those who force their hand because they want to free up cash, they might end up having, you might say, let's make 150K on trainer, right? But with a dead rookie, you're going to have to then use 2 trades to cash that 150K or just sit on a dead rookie, which is going to suck. So that is the risk that you do play on going early.
The best part, probably point I can make about Bustlinger as well, Sandy Brock. The fact, he played the Giants first week, went 80, second week 39. McGovern comes back, he's out. And he potentially could, there's some talk he could play this week. But, the 80 starts the cycle out and you get one good week and then he's back out of the side again. So that's probably going to be the biggest warning there for the Bus.
And I think people did go on Brock too. So that is probably the big thing to consider. The other one to consider is if Sardis does get named. So he got pulled out of playing VFL. I think it was a short turnaround between obviously the Anzac game and when the Bombers are playing again. There's rumors that maybe Shield could get rested. He's a bit sore, a bit banged up or whatnot. So he could get rested on a short turnaround. And it improves his chance. So I'm not saying he's definitely playing, but if they don't play you in VFL level, it means that they want to keep you fresh because they're probably going to play you, or they want you as insurance and they can't afford you to get injured. So as in, we need you or your type and we don't want you to get hurt. So we're going to stop you from having a run because we don't want you to get sore. We don't want you to get, to pull up sore from that. We don't want you to get injured or suspended, and we're going to keep you as insurance. So either way, his chances have gone up. I don't know if you can pick him though, Swizz. If he's in for another player at 190K, I mean, he does have a negative break even, doesn't he? Like it's break even of negative 15.
Yeah, it's negative 15. And like if he has the role where he's starting, it's like it is tempting. But then you are really hoping that he performs well. He doesn't get subbed out early, all those sort of things. So you'd have to have a lot of confidence in the way the team is named. And it's so hard because you know what happens with so many of these games right now. And I don't know how this is sort of dragged in, Before, when a game used to be at 2:10, whatever time, that bounce would be then. Now what happens is like games kicking off at 7:35 and it's 7:37 and they're still in their huddles and they're slowly making it out and stuff, and Supercoach locks out. Some other games, you get the situation where it might lock out once. Like I think Draft Stars sometimes does that. If there's
Once
a
it
bit of
bounces.
delay, it resets because the first ball hasn't bounced. But yeah, like Supercoach will lock out because it locks out at the time. Game doesn't start for another 3 minutes. And where I used to I go knowing that Supercoach locked out and the game starts right on that time, see where that player, see if they're running off to the bench, literally have my reverse trade set up. Because if I know Sardis is going straight to that midfield, I'm like, okay, cool. Maybe I do want him. But if I know he's got, at least the sub first we know earlier. But if I'm seeing him sort of going to the bench or there's another role somebody's playing, yeah, I'm not so thrilled. But unfortunately, can't make those last second decisions.
Or someone runs on him to get tagged. Like I think I saw them like, we're taking Sarong. And I was like, oh, maybe I should try and make Captain Brayshaw instead. And then it was like, oh, it's already locked out. And then I was like, okay, cool. So too late. No, I feel you on that one. All right, so we've gone through the rookies on that one. Pretty much it's sketchy no matter which way you look at it. So depending on team announcements on Thursday, McDonald could be a good shout, only if the team is favorable. Otherwise, Husweight probably if you want to go early. I'm actually hoping on some maybe on the horizon. Like, I think Bo Allen's still a little while away, but surely at some point he's going to play this season. You would have to assume like a high draft pick, highly talented. I don't know if he's great, but he's someone that you could definitely look at. Callum Mills as well as that 350K. So you can almost make, I reckon you could probably make 150K on Bice by the time Mills is back. Maybe not that far, maybe 100K. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting on that one. All right, so let's get into particularly the value town then probably and some of these questions because this is probably where it gets a little bit more.
Can I just mention one, and it's not he's not a great price point. But if you're talking about Sardis around that same price, Aaron Francis has sort of come from nowhere from Sydney. So he's gone 70 and 72, but he's 213K. So the price is awful. But if you're talking Sardis and these guys at 200 anyway, it's worth a slight little mention. It's not something I would personally go to, but I guess if you're really desperate for somebody who probably looks like he's got better job security just because the way he's playing up in Sydney, it's like he's sort of kind of reinventing himself back up there again. We know he's a high draft pick. But yeah, I thought I'd better just throw his name out there because it was an interesting one. And one that was a little bit frustrating, but nobody would have got it. I don't think anybody got him in last week. It's actually, let's see if somebody did. 195 people did. The 195 people that traded Chol in last week, Marbio Chol at 200 and I think he was about 280 last week. After he had his 277 after he had his 93 against the Geelong. He had 116 against West Coast, made 40K, and he's now got a negative 24 break even and likely to make at least another 60 or 70K. For that, now that is just absolutely throwing darts. And well done to those people who got on there because we always talk about that minimum you want 100K, but perfect world 150 plus. They might get there with Charlie, so because they obviously up on the Tigers and the D's coming up. So well done to those people.
Yep, well done to those who held Humphrey as well. I mean, he's now officially made 100K.
Though, you know what's the real one? Those who traded him in.
Oh, how many? Surely
there weren't many, but
wow,
there was a handful.
No, people are trading him in. No, people at 1,500 have got him traded in now.
Oh, yeah, okay. Now, last week, it was like, I think I screenshot, it was like 30 or 50 people or something like that. Which
some people have no idea.
What a move. Some people do that. They see everybody getting traded out. They're like, you know what? I'm going to go against the grain because, and his break even wasn't ridiculous. So,
One to just quickly though, Elijah Shue at 220K. So I know he did go up 32K from last week. He still had a lot of CBAs. He's just not kind of converting it on the scoreboard. He just goes missing in some of these quarters. Yeah. However, he's still only relatively cheap because he was sub in that, was it round 3? He got a 22. Yeah. But his last 2 rounds of a 97 and a 65 at 220K, I don't mind it too much. I was definitely expecting more than a 65. However, that game was against Hawthorn, so that was probably more of the risky game, I think you could assume, is that the Hawks midfield would probably give him a bit more of a test. And then they play Melbourne and Richmond the next 2. So as a midfield forward who's been getting a lot of CBAs, he is someone that could actually make you. I reckon he could maybe make 100K from here, but it is a risky play at 220K Swizz. What do you think about Elijah?
I
For
think
those
it's
who got rid
risky
of,
because I don't know what West Coast is doing on any given week. I am pretty confident. Well, I think one comes back in, but I think there's a huge chance Hall and Gross both come in this week. They were clearly the best two players for West Coast in the waffle this week. And I was sort of saying last week, they probably do give these players sometimes 2 or 3 games. Dua, who started the season really well, if he has another poor game, he probably gets dropped. He had a real poor game. So it would not surprise me if he gets dropped. Do they keep Long? Long started the sub. Do they give him another game? Not a sub. I think Davis was already close to being dropped. He was the one that got subbed out. Wouldn't be surprised that he goes out. So I think Dewar and Davis go out for Hall and Gross this week. Now the question is, does one come in as sub and one start playing in the field? But if Hall comes in, how does that midfield mix go again? Because Clay Hall plays CBAs. So does Hewitt and Hall play in there? Does Harley Reid get mixed around? Hutchinson was back in there playing bulk CBAs this week. And, because we know, though West Coast will probably think there might be half a chance this week, at the same time, they are experimenting different sort of midfield mixes. So I'm not confident, though, that, I think Hewitt should be in there and probably does get a good chunk. I'm not kind of confident in what West Coast are going to do on any given week. So do I really want to trade more people in for the fact that, if Hewitt had 2 bad games, he just gets dropped out again, or he's sub or something like that? I've already got 2 of them, so I probably don't want him.
Yeah, his time on ground's low as well. I think it was 70 last week, 75 this week. His 97 was heavily influenced by, I think he had 1 quarter, he had 11 touches and a goal, and then kicked another goal. And then a late goal, yeah, and in a close game as well. So that definitely influenced his scoring. If he didn't have that, though, I think he had 5 touches in the first half last week. And then even this week, he had like 3, 4, 3, or 3, 4, 5, 3. Like he's not exactly just racking it up, generally speaking. So that is also the concern. I actually just had a look at these break evens and stuff and cash cows. I was like, oh, bloody, was it Martin from Geelong? We haven't seen him this year. I was actually expecting, him to play at some point, but I just haven't seen him. Swizz.
No.
So Jack Martin, yeah, who would have thought 150K?
No, I didn't think he was going to get. I didn't think he was going to get much an opportunity. Maybe at some point, but
maybe more than Duncan. But why move if you're not going to get played? I guess. But anywho, we'll see that one. The other thing I want to touch on is it is upgrade season, and I have seen a comment here from Andit talking about bringing in players, and if you going early. So we've already spoken about whether you go early and the risks there to try and make cash, and if you want to go into it eyes open. We're not going to, we just give you advice saying we probably don't go early on all these guys, but if you want to free up cash and you want to risk it for the biscuit, sometimes it works out really well. All right. That's the choice you just have to kind of weigh up as far as the pros and cons. Speaking of pros and cons, just because you have a basket full of money doesn't mean you should probably spend it all in one place. So what I mean is at the moment, if you think rookies are bad, as trying to cash in some of your plumped up rookies to bank some money to upgrade your team, I can't see anyone at this current point in time, and we're hoping we've had, touchwood, a pretty good run with injuries, which means that there's not that many teams debuting a whole bunch of people to fix their sides. Where are you getting the money? Where are these rookies in the future that look like they have promise? So yes, some pop up, but we kind of need some luck. And you're looking at spending all of your 680K or 690K on a Bontempelli or a Butters. What about the rest of your team? You can upgrade, and you can get a Dawson for 500. Save yourself 180, 190,000. You can get yourself a Lockie Neal for 560, and you can save yourself 120, 130,000. And then you could use that to put it on someone else like a Levi, and you can go and get Levi as well. So you can go Davidson up and a Levi up, and you can go and get a premium and then throw that 130 on Levi, and then all of a sudden you've got a Chad Warner, or you've got a Petrarca, and you've got 2 premiums instead of 1, and you're not playing a rookie. Because what you're going to have is if you spend all your money spending up big dollars, 640, 650, hell, even 600s at the moment. Like Dacos was a bit of a stretch for some. Spending up big money, it's going to hurt you. You're going to have rookies on your field. Everyone's going to have a full team, and their premiums are knocking out hundreds, and you've got your Bontempelli and your Butters And the reason it works well right now and the reason it's looked good now is because Butters is tearing the comp a hole. Like he's tearing them a new one. But if he goes an 81 week and you're going an 80 Butters plus a rookie that doesn't score well, you're going to drop and you're going to hurt. And that's what's coming. The other thing I want to say here, Swizz, before I let you jump in, is that they also have the first buy. So if you're playing for overall, I would probably avoid anyone on the first buy because they're only about 4 weeks away from them not playing, and then them being the first upgrade option that you will get in the buys with the extra trade options. So I would probably hold off on a Horn Francis. I would hold off, on if you're interested in a Walsh or you're interested in, you any of those players like a Bontempelli, a Butters, a Rosie. If Rosie gets DPP, like I'm looking at Butters, Bontempelli, Rosie, and I'm looking for that after their buy. Or hell, even if I'm stuck with, let's say Chera gets through and keeps his suspension free, I could go Chera to a Butters or a Bontempelli that first buy because they got the same buy anyway. And then coming out of that buy, bang, I got that extra premium, one up, one down. Then I go Rosie. And then you're just going bang, bang, bang. I got the guys after their buys and they play all through the rest of the buys during the best 18 and you come out genius. Swizz, what do you think about overpaying? Is it detrimental to your side?
I thought the time to do it was last week because I was big on the fact that a lot of us have kind of either a Brayshaw, Sarong, Neil, that sort of area, and most have one of these gun rucks, if not two, but not your Cherry or your Gorn or whatever. But I thought there's a clear three best midfielders, Dacos, Bont, and Butters. I feel like you needed one of them, and most people were moving on getting one of them last week. Now, Butters has gone up. He's probably going to go up further if he has another good week. He might not, but the way it's probably tracking, he's probably getting to 700K. It's a lot to go pay for one player. Bont's already up around that price. So that's why I went Dacos, who, he's good enough to match them throughout the season. He can easily be the number one guy. As much as I think Butters is still probably the number one guy coming into the year, I didn't think it was worth spending the extra 80K for, it might be at most 5 points a week. It's probably less. But I still thought you probably needed one. If you didn't go out and get one and you've still got those, your Davidsons and other players you can trade and probably do it, I've got no problem maybe going one. But the problem, as you said now, the value is starting to present. So people like myself, this is where a lot of people are talking about your Levi Ashcrofts and these sort of guys. Like if you look at Levi, for example, who's now 350K. And yeah, you'd find the Kiwis got break even at 48. He could very much reach that. And they do have Gold Coast, North Melbourne coming up. So if he was to, get back to those sort of 80s and 90s, there's no reason why he couldn't start making a little bit more K. It might not be a huge amount, but he could still get up to, 370, 380. But he's now only 150 away from Petrarca, Dawson. There's a whole list of players we can go through. And you're like, well, yeah, how close can some of these guys, an Isaac Heaney, for example, again, 150, 160K cheaper than Butters and Bont, who have done it in the past. Like, is it really worthwhile at spot? Because the next thing, as you said, who's the rookies that are going to come through? And I was sort of looking through some rookies, and I'll talk about them in 2 secs, who you're going to have the opportunity to downgrade some of these other guys to free up the cash and then make more cash. So then you can go out and get another one of these guys. And by the time, if you don't go and grab the value while it's available, you're going to miss the value. And 4, 5, 6 weeks time, this value might not be there. So people will jump on it now, and then you've missed the value. And all of a sudden you're looking at your team going, geez, I've only got 6 premiums in the midfield. How does everybody have 8 premiums scoring at least 105, 110? Yeah, I've got a guy scoring 120, but who really cares?
Yeah, I feel you. And that's the big dilemma at the moment. I'm with you. I'm okay with trading Levi Ashcroft. If you want to and you get the premium, he might make a little more cash, but also if you want points on field and that stability, sometimes you just have to cut them, right? I think I did it a couple of years ago and I cut Dacos and then he ended up averaging 110 for the back of the year or whatever it was. Levi isn't that. He's a role player. They put him forward, they put him mid, they put him wing, they put him defense. They pretty much put him where they have to, and he's a good player and he's going to get you some 80s and 90s, and he might actually have a breakout game and score you 100 at some point, right? But he's also a young player that maybe just 1 week it doesn't go to him, it goes to the other ground, like the other side of the field. And we've seen it against Geelong. He did drop a 35 or whatever, so he can drop a poor score at some point. So I'm okay with that. Now, on the other side, though, as you said, I think they play Melbourne and North. So the Suns this week, then Melbourne and North. So if he's going to get another spike game, it's probably over those couple. The other thing is, I think you can also afford to hold him a little longer, get rid of a trainer, get rid of some of these other guys if you wanted to, these other rookies, like your Kakos and all these other guys that are probably not going to score you as consistently on field, because again, he's going to have 2 games where he might score well, and then they have the last bye. So if there was ever a case to mount where you're actually going to hold the rookie through, and he's probably going to hold at least value. I don't know if he'll go up a heap of value, but he'll get you scores, and you'll be able to take him all the way through to the bye, and then he could be your final upgrade piece. That's also a play. And I don't think there's a wrong answer there, Swizz. It depends on what you feel like doing. I'm probably going to hold him for the next few, but if someone gets rid of him, I'll be like, fair enough. I mean, I got rid of Davidson 2 weeks ago. I got rid of Murphy last week. So sometimes those rookies, once they fatten up, you just got to cut them and hope that a Cleary or someone comes through with the goods with an 89. Or when Patton comes and gets named, I hope that Stone actually produces for 1 week and does. Swizz. Good old Stoney. I think Swizz is stalled out. I don't know. He's sitting there. He's doing his best impersonation of. Yeah. Oh, there he is. Okay, right. Stone came through with the goods for me the 1 week I needed him. I posted
I was like,
McRae
I couldn't believe you had him on field. Ben and I were playing each other. I was like, well, this is in the bag. And then Stone kept scoring. I was like, how do you have him on field? But it's all good. I did want to mention a couple of players, because we're talking about potential players that might come in from the VFL. And so it is a little dim that guys that haven't played. Probably the best opportunity we have is through St Kilda. We really actually need the Saints, if anything, to kind of lose some games so they start actually blooding a few more players. At the moment, obviously they've been performing quite well, but they've had a couple of down weeks. That would suit us through the roof, because if that was the case, we might have to pick up a couple of players who might get an opportunity. So Boxshell's the big one. 24 touches, had 110 AFL fantasy on the weekend. So it's good. Those people who held Liam O'Connell, he played quite well as well. Taru just got suspended for 4 weeks, so that's annoying because he was actually starting to show something. So I think that they're the ones that look the best opportunity. Unfortunately, he's a high price, but Josh Smiley played his best game for Richmond on the weekend. So he had 24 touches. And I don't think it'll be long until they give him an opportunity too. But again, it's not the best price for us, but at least it is a guy who's is rookie who will come in and at least will get a good opportunity. But you're sort of trying to look at guys who are going to be from teams who aren't contending, and the ladder's kind of so tight this year. It's a bit hard. Like Archer Day Wicks has played some good games. He's been on the emergency for Bombers most weeks. And I felt like if the Bombers had lost a couple of those games recently, not that they probably were ever going to lose those games to, West Coast and even as much as they limped over the line, but they still got the result, and they've got North Melbourne this week, which you'd think they would probably win. It's, I felt like if they'd lost a few more, maybe he gets an opportunity at some point. And we've obviously talked about, sort of guys like Sardis. So it is a little dim on it. And hopefully the ladder sort of starts to sort itself out over the next 3 or 4 weeks, where we get a clear, even if it's, maybe it's the Swans, but if they get players back, they're probably going well. But, we're already seeing with West Coast, North Melbourne, Urquhart's not playing that well at the moment. Maybe they throw him an opportunity at some point, but not great. But really, it starts to come down to Richmond, Melbourne, and hopefully the Saints drop back, and then we might get some more rookies coming back soon.
Sorry, Chris just saying Noah's still not down. Boxall, I think, is definitely a good chance to play this week, because if you're going to sub out Garcia and give an absolute spray to your team and make an example out of one of your young players, I think you have to back that up by dropping someone like that and putting him in. So we already see, like, Saints, they didn't do well, right? Wanganeen Miller wasn't having a good game, and then was the number 1 rated player on field after halftime because they put him in the midfield. So that's definitely something exciting to look at. Twofold. Number 1, Saints have the best buy. If they're putting Wanganeen Miller in the midfield, that improves the consistency, I feel, as far as his scoring. And he's already going at, a 110 average, pretty much, 111. And it also then doubles down on Sinclair, because if Wanganeen Miller is playing midfield, well, then Sinclair is going to be that general. And he's kind of dropping in price enough where if they continue with that road and the role for the players there, then Sinclair's going to absolutely tail up as the only guy back there. So I think there's definitely some value in him in the next 2 weeks if you don't own him. And that's the other thing you need to do, is that not just look at what you want this week, but also look at how you need the money and how you're going to get it done in future weeks. Because if you want someone that's, going to be 565, like a Lockie Neal type, you generally can't get there in one. And if there's not 2 rookies on the bubble that look good, it's really hard to kind of get there, it seems, this year. So you might have to plan a little more, bank a little bit of cash, and then, wait for a rainy day.
It'll be interesting to see what the Saints will actually do there, because Mason Wood was taken out of the game, I think, halfway through the third quarter. So you've sort of got Wood, who, he might not get up. Keeler didn't have the best game. Obviously, what happened with Garcia early on. Do they, now after they give him the spray back him in, or as you said, he, most likely should get dropped. And do they keep Wanganeen-Malera there, where it's more likely, do they bring in an O'Connell or a Hasty to strengthen up the back line so they can play Wanganeen-Malera in the midfield? Or is it the fact that Wanganeen-Malera goes back and Boxshell's the one that comes back in the midfield? But the fact that they've already got guys like McRae and Steele in there, I nearly feel like they want that kind of pacey, sort of different type. And I feel like it's more likely the defender. But it'll be interesting to kind of see how they, play that.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how they shape up. And the defensive line's interesting. Like Ash keeps being underrated. He's another one I actually want to look at as well. Just side note, as far as the role change and what I saw, GWS is getting smashed. Like Briggs got absolutely torn. So on center, was it first crack? Torn to shreds. Like 18th in the comp as a ruckman, and he's just not getting it done. So it's going to be interesting, because I think they should probably play Madden. He's been doing well in the VFL. He's been getting hit outs. He's been following up. He's been doing a lot. So they have to reward Madden. I think Briggs gets dropped. And also, they actually put the Giants' midfield wasn't working. They actually put Ash into that midfield. For that second half, when they were getting flogged and they weren't doing it in the third quarter, they were getting beaten, they put Ash into the midfield. Because it was almost like, well, we're losing, so we need to do something. So let's just see what we can do, and let's give other people an opportunity. And Ash dominated and scored, a 140? Just had a killer game. So I'm actually interested to see if he gets named to midfield this week. Because if he does, then he could just be absolutely pigging as a defender. So he's someone that I am looking at. But yeah, you need to have some sort of forward thinking as far as where you're going in future weeks. And Chris is also looking at Sinclair next week, as am I. So I'm torn between, do I try and get a Lockie Neal this week, or do I try and look at maybe a Sinclair or someone in future weeks and then wait for your Butters and Bonds and then a later midfielder that shows some value?
We probably should talk about some of those options, some of those players that we could be potentially looking at either this week or down the track over the next couple of weeks.
Well, this week's pretty obvious, and I think most of the questions will go along those lines, where it's mostly the forward options. That seems to be where we're going. So Zach did put a comment out earlier, upgrading, going like a Levi Ashcroft and a Pryor to Petrarca and Bustlinger. So that's what we're sort of talking about, 2 guys that you've probably been having on field. I'm assuming you have someone on your bench you can bring on field in the meantime, but it looks like, to get a Petrarca. So 1 up, 1 down. Petrarca seems to be a really, really big option for those. I don't mind getting rid of Pryor. And if you're going to get rid of Ashcroft, I guess that would be fine. But, it depends on who your other D7, D8 is, I think. Swizz, what do you think for that one?
Yeah, I could talk into Track a little bit more detailed. So obviously being at the game, you get to see it. And he was running so hard into space when he doesn't obviously have the ball, and working for his teammates, which was great. I thought Track had the ability to go 150 plus. He handballed one off to Viney, who missed. He should have taken that shot and kicked a goal.
Yeah, that was horrible.
Definitely, you could see that where if everything went right, it could have been a massive score. However, I feel like this week, again, it'll probably be a massive score. But against the good teams, they're not going to let him have the space that obviously Richmond did. They had his best matchup looked like when he was actually in the forward line when Nathan Broad was playing on him. Once he went into that midfield, Camden McIntosh is giving 120 points up against every opponent this year. So when they sort of then come out of this little good run that they've got going, I think what the D's then have Hawthorn. I'm pretty sure there's Brisbane away, and then the Swans, which will be potentially Jordan, because the way Oliver and Petrarca are playing, I think Jordan would go there. And then I think it's the Saints, which could be windy as well. So if he's playing midfield, there was times on the weekend where he played, on Thursday night, he played deep goal square, and then he was moved up to that sort of 40-meter mark and was playing kind of that rank and roll, and then there's other bits where he was pure midfield. So, yeah, I think he gets fine, and I still think he can score decent in some of those other games, but I feel like Melbourne, if they were to start getting on this losing streak, which is most likely when you get these harder teams, those 130 scores that we're going to see over these couple of weeks probably drop back down to a 90 to 95 guy, maybe get the odd ton. But so I don't know if he's the be-all, end-all option, as good as Track is, because the Ds are going to struggle.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was looking for the eye test from him, and I do feel like, as you said, he was running hard. He actually looked good. His work rate looked good. He looked like he was working well for someone that's what I was looking at. I'll probably pair him with some of the others that people don't own around the same price as well, because, if you have, let's say you don't have Rankin, you don't have Petrarca, right? They're pretty much the same price. And then you got Chad Warner, who's 40K cheaper, break even of 80, against the Giants. So do they go to him? Do they go to Heaney? Because Warner has been playing a lot more midfield. I think it's 75% midfield the last 2 rounds since he's got DPP. So, it's interesting. Out of those 3 guys, can you rank them 1, 2, and 3? Can you rank in 1, 2, and 3 as far as Isaac and Petrarca and Warner? How would you?
For me, it's Rankin. Right, Rankin's got the ability to be one of the best players in the comp. He's awesome. The way Adelaide played outside that Giants game, they play quite an attacking football, and they want the ball in his hands, and he can bob up for goals, and he does it all. So I just love Rankin as a pick. When is he going to tweet? Yeah, that's the thing, and that's the problem, because we've got that history, and that was the whole debate about starting him or bringing him very early compared to bringing him in. Like, the risk is there, the same risk every week, but as the season more goes on and he has to play more and more games, it's a guy that doesn't obviously play 23 games, but from a pure scoring potential, Rankin's number 1. For me, number 2 is Warner. I've got Warner over Petrarca more for the fact that I think Sydney start performing better. Some of these guys start filtering back into the side, and they were great for a half of football this week. And then the Suns turned it on and they had no answer. But, I think they need a couple more bodies around that. And once they get that, I think the Swans start getting onto sort of winning. So, like, now that Warner's also signed, and that might have been part of it as well. Why, until that moment, until they knew Chad had put signature to paper, which he obviously has now, they were playing him forward even without Mills and Goulden being there. Maybe it was just a sign of going, well, we're trying to plan in case you are not here for the future. And now that he signed, like the moment he signs back up, bang, you're back in the guts and you're part of our future going forward. So I think I quite like Warner, and it's also a better buy compared to Warner. Like, Warner's on that, actually. I thought Warner's on that pretty good buy, because he's got Gold Coast, Richmond, Collingwood. Now, it depends on who you've got, but most of us probably don't have any Richmond players. Well, from a premium point of view, you may have Nank, but probably not any premiums. Your only Collingwood premiums, probably Nat Dacos. You might have, some people might be looking at getting Josh in. I don't think anyone's still got Perryman. So maybe the odd person, Darcy Cameron, but I can't really think of Collingwood premiums. And then Sydney, you've probably only got the guys in the back line in Roberts and if you wanted to count Bices. And then you got the Suns, where most have traded out Humphrey, and some people have Rowell, some people have Anderson, but not really that many. So I think that Swans buy is a way better buy to manage compared to something else, where the Melbourne buy for Petrarca, Adelaide rank, you're talking obviously Rankin. Well, it's probably nearly as much of a muchness, but because you got Rankin there, the Hawks, some got hold of Newcomb last week. At least he got a soft ton for you, so it's not bad. West Coast, we're probably wanting to trade out by then. You're fleeing your marriages and stuff like that. So, maybe it is a bit of a muchness. Adelaide, though, some people are looking at now bringing in Dawson. Some might be bringing in Laird. So there's probably a couple more. Melbourne, obviously, a lot of us have Clary, and probably not trading out Clary unless there's a obvious poor game in there, because he keeps, he's like Cher at the moment, just keeps turning up. So I think the Sydney buy is probably easier to manage than the Crows buy. Just, I
agree. You say keeps turning up though, but sure, it didn't turn up on the weekend. anyone that doesn't have JHF, I think it's close enough now to the buys that you could probably just wait.
Yeah,
And when
that's my
he's
plan.
on fire, he's on phone. In the first 5 minutes, it's funny. The commentators were saying like, "Oh, he looks switched on today." Like in the first 5 minutes of a game, if JHF is actually there to play or if he's not. So I think for those kind of guys, you can wait. You did speak about
Especially
Chera.
JHF, because you got Ballarat this week. Like Ballarat's it used to be great for McRae, like he loves that place. But if you don't play regularly at Ballarat, it is a really tough ground to play at. Like the wind's next level, obviously not protected by the stands. They're doing reconstruction there. I think there's only 5,000 people getting in this week too. It can be a really tough place to play. Then they've got the showdown, which will be obviously a big game, and then Port play, as much as it's a home game, but they got the Giants, Freo before their bye. So it's not the easiest run. Like Horn France is still good enough to score good sports scores, especially the ones at home. But it's still do you really want to be coming up against, especially the Bulldogs and Geelong leading into your bye. So I still think Horn France is probably not going to hurt you too much in regards for a guy that's going to break even of nearly 120. You can just wait.
I agree. We did touch on Chera just a little bit. If let's say he is suspended, and let's just say the suspension holds. Now, is this then the week then to get rid of Chera? So let's say consider he misses a week.
Yep.
Right. Now this is twofold. If you're only going one up, one down, and you can use a boost to get rid of Chera to someone else, then you could then have 2 more premiums playing this week than you would have otherwise had. Generally speaking, if you have a player that maybe misses for a week and they're a hold, like let's say you're happy with what they're doing, you think that they're top 10 to 15 and you want to hold them for the season. If you upgrade a player, then you're still going to have the same amount of premiums this week as you did last week. So that's what I would look at doing to upgrade your team, and still you keep that upgrade cadence going. So this week you'll upgrade a premium, 1 misses, so you're going to have the same amount of premiums as you had last week. But then the week after, you're going to have 2 more premiums than you had obviously the week before. So that's what you try and do sometimes in upgrade around them, so that we have another premium on field. However, Chera, who was probably going to be a stepping stone anyway, he's done his job. He's made 70K. There are other players there that are ready to pounce. And I think if you're highly ranked and Chera does miss for this week, if let's say he doesn't get off for whatever reason, I'm quite happy to get rid of him. What do you reckon, Swizz? You getting rid of Chera if he misses?
Okay, well, I was already considering it even without the suspension.
And he has the first buy too. So
and that's one of the reasons for it, because he's got the first buy. The break even at 111, whatever. It's like that's pretty well what he's doing as it is. But like it's more than done his job. But it sort of depends where I want to go to. So if I kind of want to go down to Warner, because I feel like Warner's the value at the moment with the break even of 79. Yes, it's against the Giants, but I still think Bedford probably goes to Heaney. I know Heaney can play obviously forward, but it wouldn't surprise me if it went to Warner, but Heaney's probably their most damaging guy, and you could have sort of go down to Chera to Warner and make like what's that, like 50K straight off, and get a guy who probably actually suits my buy structure more. The other one, which is really tempting, and this is a real left field move where then I've got to move other parts around, but Tristan Xerri is probably as cheap as he can get. And I don't mind the move of going, okay, can I completely restructure? It is the same buy, which is frustrating, but Cherry's got a break even of 41 and he's up against his old sparring partner, Goldstein, who's 53 years old. And it's going to be a big ask for Goldie to chase around Chera all day, because if they've got him projected to go 100 and that's getting him up 30K. There's a real world here where Tristan Xerri goes 140 again. A, becomes the vice captain option for the weekend, and B, all of a sudden he's now 630, and the week after will be back to his starting price.
How are you getting him though? Like the only way you're getting him is if you have someone like a Nankervis or an English, or you had Flynn at R2. Like that's the only way.
My thought was, and this is why, because I'm looking at like, can Flynn become an R3 cash cow for a couple of weeks?
Well, he could, but then you're missing Flynn's score on field.
Well, this is it, but is Flynn's
then
score going to be that great because he's playing Gawn anyway?
True, but then
like, can I get the same?
If you don't have a Cherry is such a good price, and I guess that would be a play. Whereas I'm not. the Flint, the Cherry owners, right? The Cherry TDK kind of guys. I'm not moving Flynn to R3 so I can get Gorn because Gorn's too expensive.
Yeah,
Yep.
but that's kind of the difference right now because Gorn is
Priced out
640.
640. Yeah.
But Cherry, if you want Cherry, this is the last week to get Cherry.
Yeah.
Unless
I can
you
see that.
hope he has a bad game at some point and get him after his bye.
And really, Flynn's only at R3 for what, a couple of weeks?
Well, that's kind of
your
the
flex is
thought
done.
because Flynn against Melbourne, what is he realistically going to put up against Gorn?
Well, I'm actually
75, 80?
worried that West Coast are probably
And
going to
this
play
is the
two
other
rucks.
problem. This is
And
the other
not only
problem
that,
as
so
well.
like Archer Reed's doing great job. He's doing well. However, he is also first year of playing properly full season. He was there in the system last year and he's doing a great job. However, if putting my coach's hat on, if I'm playing against Max Gorn, and it could be absolute fabrication, I have no idea, right? But if it's me, I'm going, okay, well, I know Flynn can kind of go forward. Williams, I know, can have a good job, and maybe I'll just tag team Max Gorn and try and work him over. And I'm not going to be able to work him over if I'm just playing, Archer Reed, who's going to be there. And yes, if he goes up against the old Brisbane boy, bloody, I can't remember his name now. He's
Fullerton.
Dead to me. Fullerton. See, there you go, full of it.
I know your players, mate.
No, he's out of my time now. But yeah, so I mean, I can see them possibly pairing up and double rucking Gorn because that's probably what I would do. And yeah, so if that's the case and they name both, then I think that's definitely a good option. And even then, still a good option. You might take a small price hit though. You're not being able to put him on field, say next week or the week after, because you're going to have to ride him until he drops. But if Cherry gets up to 625 when he's matured, then all the cash you've actually earned from Flynn has just gone out the window because Cherry's now 625, and you go, man, I want that flex now, but I can't get him.
And it won't be mate. Cherry will be 625 next week. And his break even will be like that, depending on what he spanks Essendon
for. What's he priced at? 550?
No, he's like 580. 580 with a break even of 41.
Oh, geez, he has gone up. He was low.
Yes, he was.
He was like 550.
He's gone back-to-back massive scores.
Oh, he has too. Yeah, he was 557.
This is what I'm saying. And Supercoach's projection for him is really low because usually when he's playing, he hasn't had a great record against Essendon, and usually Draper's more of that defensive ruck, where Goldie's just not. Goldie won't have the go of Cherry around the ground. So you've got, and it's not like they can bring you're going to bring in someone else to stop it. There is nothing else.
They have no one else.
So Cherry, who's rolling up 144 against the TDK type, what could he potentially put up against Goldie? Like, it wouldn't surprise me he puts the 140 up. And now all of a sudden we're talking, it's not 610s next week. He's now 630 next week with a break even that's still going to be low. And this is the problem because you're playing, he's playing Big O. Even if he goes a flat ton or something against Big O, that could be now become 640. He's back to his starting price. No one's bringing Cherry in at 640.
Yeah, you're right. And if he does go 100 over the break even, then that's 50. So he'll be automatically 630k.
Yeah.
And you're stuffed. Yeah, it's funny. So AB95 saying Cherry 200 this week. Maybe if they don't put him on the bench for the fourth quarter.
I don't think. Yeah. Well, see, that's the difference. See, Gorn will obviously get, and I can see that this week happening too. If Melbourne get far enough ahead, but it's probably going to be tougher because it's an away game. And West Coast probably play that little bit better at home. But maybe Gorn gets again rested late in the game or parts, depending on how the game's playing out. We know that's a possibility. North aren't going to rest Cherry because literally that's their only option, and they're going to be backing themselves to win this game. Like Bomber supporters will be going there. Like, actually, I'm talking to a couple of Bomber supporters today, and they're like, "These are the sort of games that get us nervous because look what happened to them 2 weeks ago against West Coast. These are the games that should just be a Monty for them to win." But they're not.
I think North were close enough.
That North are going to back themselves big time to win this, and Cherry's going to be their main part in it. And I really like the idea of Cherry VC more than even probably Gorn, as much as Gorn is playing, West Coast. And there's the thing there about the tag. I don't think West Coast maybe have the cattle there as much as what they have in the past. That's the difference this time. But there's going to be Cherry will be the highest percentage player VC this week, and his ownership is already huge. Like a lot of us are sort of fading because we're gone, but it's at 52%, and more importantly, but then you look at the top 1%. So this is where I'm kind of like, do I really want to go? And this is one of the reasons why I also want Dacos, because I don't want one of these guys that do have quite decent ownership, which Dacos obviously 82% in the top. But where is Cherry here in the top 1%? Maybe it's actually a little bit lower. 70%, 71% have Cherry in the top 1%. So, it's a big fade.
Yeah, I agree. Just going back as well, Logan did say that in previous games, West Coast have literally tagged, gone, or just hit him and niggled him every time. Wherever he went, they just kind of got stuck into him. So it'll be interesting. Shayna as well saying, Mick
can you go back
Flynn.
to Michael's point? Can you also, because this is something else which I was playing around with today, because how do you, if you have both Cherry and TDK, you trying to cover them for both of the buys. If Flynn survives that long, at least like he covers one of them for that week, part of your best 18. If he
But it's
is
best
in that
18
R3,
anyway. So if he is R3, but then you're going to have to trade out a 99k Boyd if you have him. I mean, if you have Archer Reed, then you could just trade Archer Reed out.
Archer Reed's the perfect thing because you've made 100k and it's that. I'm actually looking at the Boyd idea and going Boyd to Husweight to make it happen. So Chera to Cherry and Boyd to Cherry and Chera down to Husweight to make it happen.
Yeah, okay, I could see that.
And back in the fact that Flynn's probably going to score the same as my rookie that's going to come on and cover.
Yep, interesting. The other one, so Shayna did say Mick destroyed Flynn, which I agree, but I think Flynn did enough outside of the hitouts because he got smashed in the hitouts kind of 2-1, right? But Flynn, I don't think is the best hit-out ruckman per se, but he did offer a lot around the ground. He was clunking some marks, he was linking up, he was throwing some tackles around, and he kind of put himself in the way, got some intercepts and got the handballs off to kind of link them up back again forward. So I think he offered a lot more outside of the hitouts. So if you just look at hitouts alone, then yes, sure. But I think what he offers them around the ground is probably what they liked from him, and that he could I'm not
buying into this whole Flynn's getting dropped this week. I don't see that. Could it happen the following week? Yeah, absolutely. And then what happens if it does? Let's say Gawn absolutely smokes Flynn like Witts did in that first week, and Flynn becomes again a 2-week play. So then we're in this same situation where, okay, he's in your flex, you move him or whatever. I'm like, cool, he scores a low score against. I still think Rucks goes 75 anyway, but I'm like, great. I probably would have got that out of say keeping Levi Ashcroft. Probably goes close enough to that, and he's cool. He's sitting at R3. He's not doing much, but I'll just cash him out at one point. The problem is then who do I trade in to get his money elsewhere, and that becomes a little bit of a bugger. But at least I've got Cherry, so it's just one of the ideas I'm sort of playing around with.
No, I think there's a lot of people looking at Cherry, and the other one as well as people talking about cutting TDK and going to Cherry for the rest of the season. If you think, but here's the crazy part: TDK is averaging 120. But if you're worried that maybe
trade him out,
if you're worried that they'll maybe split it or whatever, it's hard. Ideally, you would like Cherry in that flex spot. However, Flynn there does create an issue. That is the issue because you're kind of like, well, hang on, it's kind of a bit of a ruin to put this guy on the bench. Right, but it does actually put a bit of a valid point there. Shayna also said the other parts of that was Gawn as a non-Gawn owner, same as myself. I was hoping they would choose to leave him at home this week, which would be great. Give Campbell a go. I actually messaged this to Chris, and they do need the win, and the combination's working well for Melbourne at the moment, 3 in a row. So I can't see them changing much this week. And also, Gawn being captain. It's not like a Zorko or something where you could probably just go, yeah, we'll give the veteran a rest or whatever. But Gawn being captain, I think will feel more pressure to actually go and show up because, culture and them loving each other and the rest of it, I think he just has to show. So I am very worried. And we did speak about, Ruckman taking a bit longer to, bigger bodies. They need a few weeks to kind of get cooking. And that's the kids slang there. Chris, you'll be happy, mate. The kids getting cooking. And it takes him a bit of time to get going. And these rucks now are starting to find their fold. And this is usually where they start to dominate the back end of the season. And, they could get going. And Chris did also say, Sardis Insider, a.k.a. Chris, rested Gawn in the last game as well. So they did rest him in the back end of that quarter to kind of get him cherry ripe for that. And I agree with Shano. Cutting TDK is madness, especially while there's no TDK there. Plus, here's the other part you need to consider, right, is that you're always going to be missing someone. Like I don't have Butters at the moment. I don't have Bontempelli, right? You're always going to be missing someone, but you can still do well without these players that you are missing. And you can want them, you can get them later, and you just go, okay, I know I want them. It sucks I don't have them for those who have, but you can't just bend your whole side around just to get the player you don't have. because it's always going to happen. Like I don't have bonds, I don't have butters, right? And I want them, but I'm not just going like, oh my God, I have to get them in my side. And it's like Gorn. I don't have Gorn, and it sucks. And I hope he drops in price, but I can't just focus on that one player because there's other mids I don't have. Like I don't have Sinclair. I don't have some of these other defenders that are going well that I want to get in my side. So it's just any one of those. And you just have to back your guys in because Chris was giving me so much crap. Oh, Gorn, VC. Oh, the 170. Oh, it should have been 200. And then all of a sudden, Cherry comes up with a 158 and you don't have him. Chris doesn't have him. And I'm like, cool, that's a 14-point differential. Like, good job. Outside of the fact that your captain smashed me this week, Swizz. So, yeah. You know, I sold my soul for a VC, I call it. I've stuffed up 3 weeks in a row. I sold my soul. I put Dacos as VC. I would have had Brayshaw, Cherry as my VC and C, and both of those killed Dacos. So I sold my soul for a VC and lost 30 points.
I might argue on that one, Trav. Meek's run is great for the next 5. Nate, Gorn, Wits, the next 3. That's not selling me as a great run.
All right, I'm just going back to check some of these other questions. If you have any questions, finally, to round us out as well.
Actually, this one's on there, so about the cutting. I can't remember the percentage, but quite a few people did do that last week. TDK to Flynn. Because they had this issue. Some people had Gorn and Cherry already, and they're like, well, what other choice do I have? And then TDK puts up another 135. So there is a big, and then you've got a couple other rucks like Marshall finally came good last week.
Yeah, he's 450k,
and he's 450 and break even of 68. And if they were to drop Darcy, for example, and it was Jackson up against him, he did go 169 up against that. I can't remember if that was Reedy or Jackson last year, but then he does then run into Carlton West Coast the next couple of games, so he's going to go up in value. He's a guy that started 603 for the year, and he's 450. And we know what Marshall can do when he gets on the run.
He's dropped 150. Maybe instead of Cherry, mate, put Flynn on R3.
And wasn't Marshall the number 2 ruck or 1 ruck on the run home last year? Might have been number huge. 2. It was ridiculous the run he went on. So like you could potentially go down as that other guy. It's just a shame. Like in a perfect world, you needed kind of Marshall to hold off that big score another 2 weeks, and then he could have become. I nearly would have been happy to ride Marshall versus Cherry, just because we know what Marshall can do, and especially because they've got some games where he could go big. But it's really hard to fade Cherry at the back of my head.
Maybe I'll go Marshall. Just bank the cash.
Yeah, I would say it depends if he's playing both or if he's playing one, and how that works. Because Darcy at the moment can't get around the ground. He just looks cooked.
Oh, I feel you. All right, so questions here. So back to the top. Greek Raven, really bad week for him. So he had so Dale, Merritt, and a few others there as well. Thanks for the advice on fielding Stone. No worries at all. This week, Levi, M. Reed for Track and Husweight. So again, another one of those early rooks. I think M. Reed is definitely good to get rid of, and if he's your only way to track, I think you could probably make it. What's it? It's about I guess it's 200 differential, so you do need a 300k kind of guy. So if you have Davidson, I'd probably go him over Levi. If you don't have him, then that would probably make sense. This one for you, Swizz. Thoughts on Holmes and patented Cherry at Flex and Bustling or McDonald?
The hard thing, like Holmes, you expect him to turn it around at some point, but I think his form out of his last 3 or 4 weeks have been quite poor. Patton, obviously it's dead. So the good thing there, you are getting a known quantity who you expect probably maybe at some point that does Gorn maybe get rested or something. So Cherry is the number 1 ruck for at least points overall for the year. I think he finishes number 1. Maybe average Gorn or somebody else might slightly get him, but so you are at least trading into the best ruck. And the fact that Cherry in so many games can be a VC or a captain option, like we talk about this week. Obviously against the Bombers and his own sparring partner, does have the Tigers in a couple of weeks. And he's around those best 18 rounds is where it really comes, because we've seen this in before. You want the guys who can go 130 plus in best 18, because you might have 20 guys. Who cares if they're all getting 80? Because your 80 cycles out, big deal. Yeah, and that first bye week, he has West Coast. For the first bye week that North plays, so that's round 13. So he has West Coast straight off. which is a big one. So they have the back-to-back. So straight away there, Cherry's most likely your captain. Or I think Dacos plays the King's birthday. So you can actually go Cherry into Dacos, which is all like a great VCC setup. So, yeah, I think the move's great because you're getting one of the best players in the comp.
Yeah, but devil's advocate though. I mean, Holmes is still the 11th ranked defender. 2 weeks ago, he was averaging 110.
Yeah,
Like he's gonna have big ceiling games, and also on top of that, if you have a look at Geelong's run home, they have probably one of the softest finishes to the whole season.
100%.
I'm looking at getting on rather than getting off Holmes.
And Ben, I do agree. I was about to say, is there anybody else you can get to Cherry? Because that is something in the back of my mind, thinking I wouldn't mind to look at Holmes in a couple of weeks because I think there's still a couple of tough games in this little period. Like, yeah, he's got the break even at 160, which he can. He's proven he can go big. But Collingwood into the Giants, and it'll be interesting to see who Bedford goes to. I still think he goes to Holmes. So I can understand the worry there because, Port and then even the Bulldogs, there's some tough games. So, he might not probably lose that much cash. But for me, I'm sitting there going, God, Max Holmes, somewhere between 450 and 500, get in my team when they start playing, West Coast, Richmond twice, North Melbourne, all those sort of, their run home is ridiculous. So if there's another way you can get there, but at the same time, like I just nearly think I'm pretty convinced Cherry's, now that he's over this injury, is nearly a must, and you've probably got to own him.
Yep. And I think with Holmes, most people, if you want to try and get off a premium, I think it probably sits well with him because most people get off at Holmes. Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at with that. So moving on, outside of the Chera talk and the rest of it, someone is a bit concerned. So DB95, concerned that Caleb Daniel feels an omission is coming. So I don't know if he's going to be omitted. I still think he's doing his role well. Cheezel back there will probably help cover him out a little bit. I'm more worried that McKercher's not playing well. And if they put him back there to get a bit of confidence, because I don't think he's doing the team thing that he was last year. He looked like a great pick last year. And people were looking at starting him this year. That's how good he was last year.
Jay was huge on him.
Yeah, but he's been horrible. So I don't know. It's because they put him on the wing and tried to play him wing forward, and the rest of it probably hasn't worked. I don't know. I just don't know. Maybe they'll put him back there for a bit of confidence. But I still think Daniel's still running and doing the right thing. He's just making some mistakes. However, North are kind of close for it to click. And I don't think they want to change too much just yet because they do want everything and they do want some continuity when they kind of get that going.
Talking about horrible, shout out to my mate, I'm not going to name him, that picked up Darcy Tucker off the waivers this week in a draft. That is really hard to do, to not touch a ball in pretty much a full game of football. Everybody in our group chat could get one kick in a game of AFL because all you do if you have not had a kick is it's like the old basketball where you've got to sign the score sheet if you haven't scored or whatever, and you give away a foul or that just to get on there. You literally run down, get a kick, play on from the kick out just so you get a touch because they won't let your teammates do it. And he managed to have a statless game. Unbelievable.
That's absolutely crazy. And I actually joked because I think Patton was playing on Flanders at one point. I was like, oh, no, now he'll never get a touch because Flanders is going nowhere near the footy.
So what's more
he's dropping in price too.
Because he had 3 tackles. He had 1 free kick against. So I believe the free kick, he grabbed the ball and ran into defense 50 and still got, or might have actually been an inside 50. So he ran with the ball and then got caught holding the ball. So that's got to be one of the worst games of football going.
Find Keys is wondering, is it fine to go 0 trades this week? I think it's perfectly fine if you don't have the cash and you're not ready for the rookies and you're pretty happy. I know Chris, I think, was talking about sitting on his hands this week. I think it's a perfectly fine week to sit on their hands this week because the other thing as well is, and I think Chris said it just a little bit down if I can find it, was talking about, what happens in a week or two's time when you actually do need a downgrade and you've already burnt it. So that is the other consideration. If there's no one there this week and you go early, well, then what happens in 2 weeks' time? Oh, the guy I could have got, I've already got. And then I now need to go early on another person. And then it's just this cycle that you just have to keep trying to trade in early because you want to keep upgrading. And then it's guaranteed at some point it's going to fail. Someone will get injured, someone will get dropped, and you're stuffed. So it is kind of playing Russian roulette, particularly when it comes to trading in early or once off, sure, but just don't feel like it's a good strategy always to be continuing with that. Thomas Jack says it hasn't been spoken about, but thoughts on Fraser. Now, I actually messaged a few people on Keeper, and Swizz, you can enlighten to this because you picked him up in our bloody Keeper League pretty early, and I was like, who the hell's this guy? Like, I had no idea. I didn't really see him that much last year, so I'm sure he played, and I'm sure he played well. I didn't really see him. I see him now. Like he looks good, and
My team's going so well. He's on my bench still for keeper. can't get on the side, mate.
But those who, and I know a few that picked him up in a few leagues, so I messaged a couple other keeper leagues, and I was like, holy crap. Like, and I normally have my finger on the pulse for a lot of these young kind of players coming through, but he surprised me a little on how good he's actually been. Bont back in, I think, has helped him almost like a little protege, like another Bontempelli type. And I think he's playing well. Bevo rates him and giving him that role. Inconsistency is still there. So I don't know if I'd bring him in. He's not really a rookie. He's still, was he priced 350 or something?
Trying to find the question because somebody else also asked about Libba. So the Bulldogs midfield is really interesting because you would have thought Kennedy and Fraser would have gone back with Bont coming back in, but it's actually gone the opposite. Like Kennedy's last 2 weeks have been through the roof. And it's, like I was expecting sort of like, the natural drop off, but like Kennedy this week was 119, the previous week 125. So they are playing better with Bont around there, and they are managing Bont's minutes. Now, what happens when they get against other opposition and they start playing Bont a little bit more? So in regards to Libba, and Libba's having a terrific year, but I think he turns 33 soon, like literally in a couple of weeks and stuff. He has put his body through the ringer, probably more than nearly any other player playing in the AFL right now. Maybe Luke Parker could challenge that. So you'd think at some point with all these other Bulldogs midfielders developing, Sanders continues to improve in his 20-game career. Fraser's looking great. You got Richards through there. I feel like the Libba rest is coming at some point. And it's nothing against Libba.
Treloar back either this week or next, I think, based on that too.
Like, so they have so many options through there. And as much as I love Libba, got burnt a little bit with him last year. Yeah, and Chris is saying the same thing, gets rested. Surely they will start managing him like they're managing Bont. They're actually managing Bont in games. It's amazing. But yeah, when Treloar, they'll probably manage Treloar coming back in, and then they'll start managing through Libba. They've got some big, tough games coming up. They do have, Geelong and Hawthorn and the Suns away. Around those bye mid times when they're playing, Richmond and North, you can see it's going to be especially managed minutes through there. And wouldn't it surprise me even if they give him an extended break at some point, or even a couple, they give him a week off, come back for a couple of games, maybe a week off there, because they are firmly in play for, the top 8. So they, like a lot of teams, any chance you can get to rest players throughout the season is an absolute bonus. So it's not that I don't like Libba. I just think at his age, he's the one that's going to get managed more than other players.
I agree. Michael's asking, obviously, Essendon. So, big old Goldie, 37 or 38-year-old Goldie's playing there. Do you think Essendon draft a ruckman in the mid-season draft? I think they have to. You've got 2 guys with, season-ending injuries. They don't have anyone. And I think there's one person that stands out in my mind, Swizz, nearly got a job at the Dogs. Do you think they have to get Crosley?
There's another boy running around as well, and the name escapes me, but it's down to this other guy and Crosley, I think, are the 2 obvious options. When I saw draft, I was like, oh, yeah, no, I got Goldie in a couple of I think 3 of my drafts this week, but yeah, actually asking about the mid-season draft. But yeah, I think I'm just trying to think that, is it Visitini, the young guy that they had playing in the VFL? The week before, he kind of got a knock, and he got through no problems and stuff, but they are really down to skeleton stuff. Now in that, and you're going to want the big body, because unlike Geelong, who are playing their assistant coach as well, and Reece Stanley, they've still got Blissarves who can chop out. They've still got DeConning there. They've got options where you're playing a team like Essendon, who there's just no one else. Like, you're not going. Visitini had 28 hit-outs this week. But it'd be a big ask for him to come in and shoulder the load. Maybe against a ruck where they were playing, say, Flynn you could see the debut happening just to give Goldie to manage. But leading once those buys hit and they have that mid-season draft, I think they're going to have to go get somebody.
Speaking of rucks on the horizon, we spoke about Briggs. I think possibly getting dropped. I know Madden has been tearing away, and I think he had high touches, high possessions. I can't remember. I messaged a group chat we had. I think it was like high 20 possessions. Lots of balls. I don't know who was playing. However, he has been chipping away. He was an academy prospect that was heavily rated, and we're talking about a big boy. Like he was 204 centimeters and about 112 kilos on draft year. Like big boy. So I'd be keen to see maybe they might even bring him in. And if they do actually drop Briggs and bring in a Madden, well then Swizz, your ploy of maybe putting a Flynn at your R3 could work. And you do a couple of weeks on that. And at least that way, take a 2 more price hit on Flynn and then go Madden and then drop him down, bank huge amounts of cash if that is the case. And it wouldn't surprise me if they did name him this week as a possible option to keep an eye on. Or Boyd, if you have him, you could probably flip him sideways to a Madden if he does get named. Because I don't think Briggs is doing well, and he might need a lot of form in the VFL in order to actually get his spot back. So it'll be interesting. Moving on to Captain's Corner, Swizz, and you've already spoken about it. I think it's probably for the Cherry owners in the chat. I think it's going to be Cherry Ripe. I am going Cherry VC over, say, a Merit VC, because I think Merit's burnt me 2 weeks in a row. So that guy can get stuffed with his 610K price tag or whatever I paid for him. I think Cherry VC is an easy one for that. And it's kind of hard, but I'm naturally speaking, I'm going Cherry into Brayshaw, but I am worried about Brayshaw possibly getting tagged. It's Marvel.
There's no possibility about this, mate. There's absolutely no possibility. Like, yes, most teams go Sarong, but Brayshaw has put up a 189 before against St Kilda. They will have very short memories about him absolutely toweling them. And he is by far been, we know why teams target Sarong, but he is flying so much. There's no way Ross Lyon lets him run around this week. So Sarong might be actually, if you don't have Cherry, the better VC option, because I don't think he gets the attention this week at all. And he's just been sort of motoring around getting his 100. I think this is the week where those Sarong usually much better for the home games. They just can't let Brayshaw run around and do what he normally does.
This would be 1 week where it would be nice if they bounce the ball at 7:40 and we actually get to see who's going to who, or the chat before the game. So that's something I'm going to look at as far as what their plan is. I think Brayshaw's work rate's just far too high regardless of whoever's on him. However, I do know who's the tagger again for Saints? Because I do know his Windy. Yeah, so Windhager's his fitness is usually quite high anyway. I know he's usually around 3 to 5 in their fitness. So it'll be interesting to see. It'd feel weird to put a captain on Sarong though. Like I think I'd probably look.
I don't think I could captain. I'd want a VC Sarong this week. If I don't bring in Cherry, I think that's where I'm going, the VC, because I just can't see how they don't go to Brayshaw. He's just
I'm hoping
too high
Cherry,
of a form.
Cherry VC, and you don't even have to worry about captain. That'd be nice.
That's the hard thing of not having Cherry if you don't, because pretty well what's going to be 2/3 of the competition are going to have him VC. And the hard thing too is, like, in a perfect world, you'd love to VC Gawn, but the options to go to then on the Sunday make it difficult. But then you also probably most likely don't have a loophole option on the Sunday.
Some of us might have none. Boyd's the only one, and they play second. So
Boyd, you might have Camporelli. So that's probably the two that you're probably looking at.
Hall might not.
Or you've got West Coast, who are West Coast in that game anyway. So it's not a great one there for loopholing. So Dacos is always going to be an obvious one for any time he's playing. But Geelong, you expect they're going to send Atkins to it, and Dacos is good. Now, if you've got Bont, Bont's probably they're not going to have an answer for him. So you could potentially go like a Bont and stuff. But again, it's the most likely. It's the Thursday, Friday matchups.
They play at the same time as well. The Collingwood, Geelong, West Coast, and Melbourne.
Yeah, so and that's the hard thing too. So but not everyone's probably going to have Gawn, where probably a lot more people have Dacos. So Dacos is usually the backup. But I'm not thrilled with that. I think if you've brought in Newcomb, you've probably brought him in for this reason, to play Richmond as the captain. If your vice captain doesn't work out,
Yep.
If
I think Dacos
for
is too
yeah,
good for Geelong though, just because if it's in Geelong, then it's easier to probably clamp him on a narrower ground. It's easier to kind of put the, like the bumper cuts when you kind of, go to bowling or whatever, you put the bumper rails up. It's easier to keep him within that realm. MCG is such a big field.
yeah,
And if you're fit like him, and we saw him against Brisbane, I think it was, Berry trying to run with him, and Dacos literally ran like 90 meters sideways to get the ball to then link it up to go in there. And it's just such a big field that if you're fit enough, it's just not going to matter. And if they try and put Atkins on him, he's like, cool, I'm going to go forward. Atkins has played defender before, so that's probably fine. They're like, cool, I'll go off the back flank then. And then he's like, cool, now I'm trying to play forward. And that's the big part that he does. He just messes up the system. And when you looked at, Dacos, I think it was, so when Essendon played him, I think it was Durham that was on him. And then Dacos goes on like Durham, like, yeah, I'm going to have Dacos. I'm going to have Dacos. I'm planning all week. I've got Dacos and I'm going to tag him and around the ball and the rest of it. Dacos gets in there, goes forward flank. And they're like, oh, shit. Well, if I go and play as a defender, then what are my defenders going to do? Are we putting McGrath into the midfield? We'll just leave them. Let's not upset our
yeah.
defense, our team defense. Let's not upset that. And then in the end, he just ran away and had like, 2-3 shots on goal in the first quarter. No one got near him. So,
And you're seeing this more. I think this is a lot of people watching Carlton last year with Sam Walsh, because a lot of Sam Walsh was starting inside the 50 and run. So on the weekend, you had Merritt and Dacos both starting inside 50. So Redmond goes to Dacos. The Redmond obviously wants the one-on-one battle inside 50. Dacos just sprints off. Redmond's not going to go with him. And all of a sudden, you've got no real person, as you said, and then he just floats around what you got, and then it ruins sort of the structures going around. Yeah. Why that didn't work as well for Merritt, because they've got Perryman back down there, who plays defensive midfielder anyway. So it's not a big loss him playing a halfback or moving to the midfield if that's the one that they want to run with, which is the most likely. So they actually have a matchup that can solve that problem, which it does. So, and the other part, which was hurting Essendon too, they don't have Caldwell or Parrish at the moment. So you take the Pies, you take out Dacos, as much as he's by far their best player. There's still like, Long, who's 190 centimeter beast or whatever he is. You can still throw De Goey in there. Side bottom and Pendles are still getting it done at 73 years old. Where the Bombers, it starts to get a real thin because of just the outs that they have. So they were trying to do the same thing, and it just wasn't going to work for them.
Yeah, as thin as their attendance in Melbourne around August, October, hey?
I'll go a couple of these ones. Yes,
yeah,
100%. Like, Suitcase was the one getting it last week. Amazing that they just let Neil run around and do whatever he wants, but they do go that more. That's how Ross the boss plays. So he's 100% going Brayshaw.
And that's going to backfire too, because you tag someone who's in form and you forget about the beast that racks up. So Neil's had attention, no attention, kicked like a couple goals, and everyone's like, oh crap, maybe we should have tagged that guy. And it'll be the same.
Sarong's going 40 this week. Like,
so, yes, they'll get on Brayshaw, and then everyone will remember how good Sarong is, and they'll go, oh crap, that's why we tagged that guy. And it's going to happen.
Him. That's exactly what happens of this sort of stuff. And the Zorko, like, I love Neil and Zorko as the massive backup, but Chris, this is the thing is, and maybe you've got the option to have the loophole option for Gorn. So maybe you've got Patton or someone like that might not be playing. If that is that you can loophole, but a lot of people aren't going to have the loophole on the Sunday. Hopefully you don't. And you just
Chris is really active for a guy that can't come on the stream.
Yeah, that's right. He's sitting in the crib with Noah, and
he'll send us a message. I didn't get the link this week, boys. I didn't get the link this week.
Yeah. Where Zorko and Neil, the Suns will just go head to head with the in the midfield. So
that'll be a big game this week, actually.
It's massive, but it's huge. You know what? Actually, no, we say it's massive, and it'll be like every other Q clash where the Lions tell them by 10 goals.
The Suns will show up like they did against Richmond. Is pretty much what you're saying.
100, mate, 100. I want to be proven wrong on that one, but we need to see it. Like, if this was at People's First, is that what it's called these days? Metricon, down in the Gold Coast, I'd have a lot more faith in the Gold Coast up against you guys. But at the Gabba, I don't see it.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the Lions show up, but that'll be a real cracking game. I actually think Adelaide, after losing a couple, I think they'll really bring it against Carlton, and they are favourites at Adelaide Oval, so that'll be interesting there. Geelong also should bounce back. I think Collingwood are probably due for a loss. Well, Geelong, the oldies against the oldies, I think, Geelong, this is a game where I think they might actually try and learn a lot from last week's loss to Carlton, and I think they probably bring the pressure. And if you've won quite a few in a row, sometimes, you just lose that pressure a little bit and that edge, and someone knocks you off for a round. So I think that's a real danger game for Collingwood this week, and they should win, but I just think a danger game. These away from home will be interesting. I think West Coast are probably also due for an upset, same as North. I think North could win this. West Coast could win this. Geelong could win this. And I think there could be a few upsets this week. So, yeah, hell, even Sydney and GWS, like GWS are favourites away from home. Sydney haven't been great at all. And all are of GWS, though. So there could be a whole round of upsets this week, except Richmond definitely aren't winning. And I'd say that's probably it as far as...
You know what? The funny thing about that is because the Hawks games, we used to always go when Hawks were having their dominant, and there'll be a Hawks supporter out there who will know this exactly. But the years the Hawks were winning the flags, Richmond used to always knock them off, and my Hawks mates hated it because be like, oh yes, we get to beat Richmond this year, and then we'd beat them in a match, and they're like, well, I guess we're going to go on and win the flag because that's how it usually happens. Though I don't think that's happening this year, but it would be nice. Merritt will be getting good soon. 100% he runs with Newcomb. 100% it does not matter. So Cripps went 120. Like I nearly know this off by heart now. Cripps 120 against him with the tag. 130 was Rosie. 120 was McRae. 130 was Neil. I think he kept Sarong to about 103.
He did.
Which was probably his best win.
Brayshaw went 150 something that week.
But literally every week, just and he didn't probably have the full on tag, only a little bit when Petrarca went midfield, and then Petrarca obviously went forward too, but Petrarca still scored 129. So like McIntosh is giving up bulk points for a guy that's playing as a tagger.
Yeah, the only one he did tag was Sarong, and it sucked.
Yeah, the only one he got hold of was Sarong.
Yeah, and he was my captain that week, which sucks.
Yeah, so I'm not worried about that at all. Like Rao, I think Rao was 130 when we played him, and stuff. So yeah, no worries at all. Like at worst, I think you're getting 110 from Newcomb. At worst.
All right, we've got 3 questions left, I think. Should we trade out M. Reed and Clary? Wash for Husweight and any player. Or Wash.
Yeah,
Will Ashcroft.
Your boy, Wash.
Yeah, okay, sorry. I know the Washcroft.
Didn't he play well on the weekend for once?
Will Ashcroft did all right. I'd probably get Clary. I think has the earlier bye, and he's just not scoring as well. I think Will Ashcroft against North and Richmond. No, who are they playing? North and Melbourne. I think he'll probably do pretty well in those couple of games. So I don't know if Lions win. I think he does pretty well, generally speaking. And he started off really slow, like he has in other games. But I still think he's okay, and he has the last bye. If you were going to get off him, it was probably last week or, around that point. So if you've already held him for the one price drop, you might as well let him plateau and flatten out. I don't think he's going to go back down to starting price. He'll probably go down to about 460, 470, and then get back up to about 500 around the buy, and then you'll be fine. He has a high ceiling game, so all he needs is another 130, and he's back up over 500, so I wouldn't be too worried about him. Whereas Clary's just been going 90s, and his floor's good. Floor's better than Will Ashcroft because he didn't get a 40. However, he hasn't actually set the field alight, and he's not getting those 130s, 140s that Will is. So I'd probably take the high ceiling guy, especially when buys are coming up. That 130, 140 could really help you if he does spike a score in that one. So
I'd probably go to Clary, mate, is he was 23 at halftime against the Tigers.
Yeah, pulled his finger out.
Yeah, he scored 75.5, and he does have West Coast this week.
I'd keep him as well. I'd probably go M. Reed and a rookie to then go to a cheaper premium like your Chad Warners, your Petrarcas, your Rankins.
I would be trying to hold Clary for one more week and then sort of see how he goes this week. And if he goes great, then it becomes
one
a week
big score. He goes to 5. Yeah, one big score. He goes to 500, and then he gets a spike score. He keeps it for 3. He moves into the 500s. They come towards their buys. You move him out, and you're happy. So I don't think he's a season-long keeper, but I think you can keep him for a bit longer and then fix other holes in your team. Okay, I think you're fading track and going Warner next week because of Bedford. Thoughts? It's an incredible next month, and it seems to be a bit of a downhill skier. So I'm also thinking of Warner next week. So I don't know if I'm going to get him this week. I don't know if he'll get tagged, though. So, if he's playing midfield and then Heaney gets attention and they put Heaney forward, then he might definitely get some attention. And he is prone to kind of throw up a stinker now and then. So he's break even of 80. He's 460K. So even if he scores 100, right, he's only going up 10K, so he's 470. If he goes to 120, he's going up to 480. So he's still going to be super cheap next week regardless. I'll probably just play it safe and not get him this week. And it allows me to probably pick up another player and then go value for next week. So if you are thinking of Warner and you're not sure if he's going to get tagged, I think just maybe leave it for a week. And he's still going to be super value compared to everyone else out there. So I'd probably look at him for the next week as well. Same thing there is, Kristen as well. So shout out Kristen talking about Chad Warner. Yeah, high ceiling games, but then the low score drops out. Again, I had the low score of McRae getting a 77, which sucked because I'd rather play 23 this week and I would have gone up a lot more in ranks because I had such an even contribution. But sometimes an even contribution means nothing. I'd rather a 99K donut if it meant I had a premium knocking me out another 130, 140. So that is another strategy we hadn't spoken about, Swizz, just kind of tanking your extra player and going an absolute primo.
It's been a learning curve of my NRL Supercoach. Obviously, I started off like a house on fire with that, and I've probably balanced my team too much where they've got the flex this year. So I'm getting a lot of scores of sort of 60 to 70, which is fine scores in NRL. But I'm not getting the like, I'm probably getting like still getting decent captain score where I'm getting my 100, but other people are getting this 130 guy going off. And then the next week they score like 40 or 30, but they don't care because that guy drops out and they've got the other guy that's going 130. So I'm losing points every week. So I've dropped down to about 3,000 overall compared to, which is still fine for a guy who obviously doesn't follow the NRL as closely, obviously AFL here. But yeah, I'm just not getting the spikes compared. And I'm looking at some of these top teams and there's some guys I'm like, oh, I hadn't really thought about that guy, but yeah, who cares? Like my consistent side's not really, it'll keep me up there, but it's not putting me up in that echelon. And I think that's that's why Cherry this week and potentially keeping Levi, because Levi should go up about the same amount that Warner goes up anyway. And then I can still do Levi to add Warner next week and then have the two guys that are going to go, potentially through the roof.
But to counter that, we haven't actually had any injuries, touch wood, and an early KO and early suspension on a highly owned player. Because when that does happen, that's when you're going, oh, thank God we're playing the bottom one. So like Trainer, when he was sub, cool, he was on field for a lot of people. However, if it was do or die, you'd probably, try and reverse a trade or trade him out or whatever, and it could have worked out. But that not counting on a bottom player, it's going to benefit you at some point when if you do cop a really negative sub or an injury or a KO, you're like, oh my God, thank God, and it can save you. So it is good to kind of try and fill your teams as fast as possible and have that extra flexibility player. I mean, hell, it'd be nice to have your 23 players and a loophole, which would be absolutely unreal because then you're just kind of looping a full squad of players looking for the best scores possible. And that's probably what we're sort of, looking out of that. So we need our rookies to plump up a little bit. Travis as well, asking about McRae. Just as we finish up, back in the premiums. So, I mean, you look at Holmes has had a couple of bad games. He's gone big. He's going to go big. You want him for the high rounds. Keep him. He's averaging 11th in defense. McRae is also still averaging 108. What is he? Second highest averaging forward? Maybe behind Rankin. He's definitely top few. So he'll bounce back and he'll be fine.
He's got the role. Like he's their best midfielder.
Yep.
Jack still gets like potentially moved out of that midfield at some point because he looks awful. But McRae, he's their number one guy. And it's not just wins it, but he's actually putting it inside 50 way more. But yeah, that the more of the issues there with what they do with Steele, but McRae's flying. In regards to Trainer, no, absolutely not. If you held him last week, you're holding him this week. Yes, the break even is 86. The fact that they are playing the Hawks and the ball might spend more time down there, which could be a good thing too. But even if he scores only sort of that 60 again, he drops 10K. It's what happens the following week because it's West Coast, North, Essendon, and that 2 drops out. So you're expecting him to sort of rebound and maybe even if it's 60s, he's making 40K. So he makes that 10K back that he's lost. And he only lost 3K this week. So makes that back and he's making 30K. If he gets that spike game or if he goes back to scoring those 80s and 90s like he did early in the season, all of a sudden that 40K becomes 70 to 80K.
Yeah. So those who have just joined the stream, so we have been nearly into the 1 hour 50 now, so we're probably going to round that up. If you did come in later to the stream, please go back to the start. We pretty much started on the 3 trade-in rookie options. We looked at a few different scenarios as far as the Levi Ashcrofts and if you should get rid of them and your Davidsons and the rest of it. Then also the value picks in. So your Warners, is he worth it compared to Petrarca, compared to Rankin? Horn, Francis, Rosie, those types, Bont, Butters. Is it worth getting them? Is it worth waiting until the buy? So we kind of unpacked a whole bunch. So if you have jumped on the stream a little bit late, we're going to end it now. You can go back, watch it back from the start and pick your way through. And thank you for those that did jump on. We've had 130 across the stream for most of this session, which is unreal. And thank you for those that put the comments in as well and interacted with us. So we do love the interaction. We used to just record it straight up and then just release it. Whereas I do like this interaction part where we can kind of cherry pick and include some of your comments within our discussions, which I think adds a lot of value to us, but hopefully you get a lot of value out of it as well. But if you haven't already, SC Insider 100, find us on Twitter, Swizz26 on Twitter as well, and Chris as well, CFX. Find him. We're on Twitter. We're on TikTok a little bit. I'm not a TikTok kind of guy that much, but shout us out if you want some more of that gear. And definitely Supercoach Insider on YouTube. Find us. And Swizz, you're going to put out your team stuff. Is it usually same thing Wednesday night?
Oh, so I usually do it as a live now on a Wednesday night and talk about questions and talk very quickly sort of about my team. But yeah, Wednesday, I do apologize again for not doing it last week. Actually, I'm just a better double check what's schedule. But apologize for not. But I am good this Wednesday.
And normally I do mine probably earlier in the week, but the Thursday team one, and even this week, I don't really know what I'm going to do with my side until teams are dropped. So I actually did a bit of a live. Yeah, I did a live, and as soon as teams dropped, it was great. I had a few people interacting, and it was probably one of the more popular team reveals I've done. And especially because I am ranked, 120th at the moment, Swizz, no name drops. But, it is really dependent on what teams are announced and if Chair is suspended. So I probably will do the Thursday night live again during probably around that 6 to 6:30 mark, just to kind of talk about my team. But also once teams drop, okay, this is what the teams are. This is what I'm thinking, and then kind of go. And then talk about some scenarios based on the Sunday teams as far as if they're in or out, and then what I'm sort of thinking as far as who looks like a sub. And I did call Tunstall to be sub. So shout out. I know my boys. That's it. Anyone that did see DR, so Dr. Supercoach yesterday, so Supercoach DR, I'm wearing the Lions gear tonight. I wore the D stuff yesterday, Swizz, to give Petrarca and Clary and Gorn a bit of love. And shout out, a couple of community actually commented as well, like, Benny, what the hell are you doing, mate? Like, what's this D's gear that you got on? So I'm glad I didn't go through to the keeper, and we appreciate you all. Share us out on Twitter and keep the comments going on YouTube as well. We are quite active across all platforms with comments. And let us know how you're tracking with your team, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.